All right, well, I'm gonna start sharing my screen here. Let me close that. Oh man, I got pictures of gooey ducks everywhere. Okay. All right, buddies. Well, hey, welcome aboard. Let me take a sip of this tea before we get going.
Oh, and just FYI, Jason may hop in on the chat as soon as he's able to,
Oh,
because he's driving home from the shop right now, and he wanted to get on, but we'll see if he does.
all right. Yeah, I'll
Totally.
let him in if he shows up.
All right, buddies. Well, my name's Jeff, and this is my business partner Django. Business partner, social partner, partner in all things. Didn't intentionally have that happen, but now he and I text each other more than I do my wife. So that's where we're at. We used a variety of point of sale systems. I mean, in the early days of me working at the shop, we had no point of sale system or inventory system, and we gave that our best go. It was open for 35 years in that state. But yeah, we started toying around with some point of sale systems. We really dug one called Moby that we used for quite a few years in our store. And the only downside of that was that it was very much like a file maker, kind of that old thing. So lots of white screens and pages of unintuitive things. But once you learn how to use it, it was a great system. So the person who had built that stopped supporting it and updating it. So for a while, like maybe a couple years, Django was taking all of the data that'd be coming in from our distributors and was formatting it into Moby things, and he was giving it to everybody that was using Moby. But eventually he had to stop that. During the pandemic, we were like, we're going to have some extra time, I guess. We should build a point of sale system. And Django was like, Jeff, if you give me 3 weeks, I can build a point of sale system. And that was
14 weeks later.
that was a little optimistic, but we did start working on it then and got it built, and it has continued to evolve and be used by us in our store. We used it in store for a solid year or so before anybody outside of our store was using it. But the whole thing is built by people who run comic shops and identify problems and holes and build tools to fix them. And it does, in our estimation at this point, pretty much everything that you need to do to be able to run a comic shop. So yeah, it's browser based. If you aspire to have no separation between your work life and your personal life, this is great for that. I did an FOC on my cell phone on my honeymoon in Scotland on a train on public Wi-Fi. So, personal victories, right? But yeah, so we're gonna jump into this because it is mostly just you, one other shop, and then somebody who's already signed up, but just kind of checking it out. Feel free to like jump in with questions. There's sort of 4 main modules that we will explore. The first thing that we're gonna look at is how contacts your customers, how they're able to have a file in here that you create, and you're able to manage all of their subscriptions and see all of the information about them, buying habits, things that are set aside for them. After we take a look at that, Django is going to show you what it looks like to run a transaction through CSA. And after that, he's going to show you probably the most boring part of it all, which is kind of the items database. So he's going to take a look at an item and all the information that is brought in about items. Pretty dry, but super useful. And every item has this huge amount of information you can access and tweak. Then we are going to pause for orange slices and Capri Suns that I should have, if I sent them out in time, they should be arrived at your house yesterday. So we'll be able to talk about our days and have some snacks, and then we'll get right back into it.
Still
I'm
my
gonna
favorite joke.
Yeah, I'm gonna show you what it looks like to build a reorder and kind of see how you can manage your inventory through the ordering process. And then we're gonna look at the FOC, which will go quickly, but is, what I spend hours and hours a week time on. And then after that, we are going to take a look at invoices, and you'll be able to see how basically any distributor that sends you stuff, you can get an invoice for it, bring it into CSA, check in your shipments from, and rather than needing to do that whole process multiple times like we had to at the beginning of the pandemic when Penguin and Lunar was showing up, we found built a way to lace all those together so you can check them all in and minimize that amount of work. One thing that you will see is, especially kind of coming from Django and my deep admiration for him, the man hates wasting movement. As often as we can, we try to make, searches able to be yielding items and contacts, or you can kind of jump from page to page of the website without losing your spot. So pretty much everything is a link. But yeah, that's my little preamble here. And now we're just going to go. We're just going to have some fun. So this is the homepage. This is what you would see when your employees get in or you get onto the website and they punch their username and password in. And then there's a huge amount of reporting that CSA can do and does. There's a bunch of stuff that we won't even be showing you because it would take hours and hours. But this homepage here kind of shows you a couple of the reporting options that are available. Right over here, there's a time clock for your staff. So they come in and punch in their PIN number and it will clock them in. They do the same thing to clock out. You can get a snapshot of everybody that's working that day. And then in the report section, you can output your payroll time clock reports for any time ranges or, any amount of customers or employees that you have. But yeah, so there's a lot of kind of small comic shop editions like that throughout here. But right here, you can also see, you can get a quick glimpse of how your sales are going that day, each day of the week, and how it compares to that day of the week, the previous week, and then your week-to-week total. Being closed Friday was inconvenient for us, Jane.
Yeah, that was a bummer.
Below that, I mean, y'all have been running a shop for quite a while, so you are aware of the sort of death by 1,000 cuts that we're all trying to dodge all the time, with people ordering things or subscribing things and then not coming in to pick it up, or forgetting that they did or moved away or something. So on the left side of your homepage here, there's a couple quick tools that you, or ideally your kind of lower staff in moments of slowness at your shop, can check and see if there is any money wrapped up in very old places. So here it can show you how much money you have set aside by date ranges. So obviously you want the oldest to be not as much money as we've got set aside. You can see how much money is in each of your locations. You can create and define overstock locations or library accounts. And then right below that, here you can get just a quick glimpse of the 5 accounts that have the oldest items in them. You can expand that obviously anytime you want, but it's nice from your homepage to be able to see who's got the oldest stuff, because there's a chance you're still ordering it for them, or maybe they just don't remember. But you can see that listing right here. It's going to show you how many items are set aside for them, how long that oldest item has been in their account, and the total dollar amount that is set aside for them.
Must really trust Yusuf.
Yeah, he's been shopping in the store for like 30 years, but I'd say he's just about worn out his welcome. Right down here, we do a podcast every week. Sounds like you are going to as well, which is awesome. We do reviews and talk about the week's books every week. We will record our scores for it on the podcast, and then this can interface with your website or Shopify and allow people to see their favorite employees' favorite books, which is, good. Except, who knows, maybe you've got some staff that nobody likes and they're like, I don't care. I don't usually say that. I don't know why I did.
That was me.
Yeah.
I know who you're talking
take it
about.
back. And then right above that on your homepage, it's always generating a list of your best sellers for that day. So from your homepage, whether you're at home or in the shop, you can go on here and check and see what you're selling today, how many items you've sold, copies of that thing, how much money you've made off of it. That list is totally filterable, so you can change categories. If you want to just look at games or cards, you can limit it to today. You can generate it to be a larger report. And there is an instance of this sort of bestsellers report that you're able to tap into when you are doing your reorders, and you can check and see what you've sold in the last week and use that to build your orders from. But I'll show you that in a little while. And then the last couple of things up here, when you create contacts, you have the opportunity to get their birthday information in their account. This is one of the first requests that users of the system asked for us to build, which is just a kind of calendar of birthdays that are coming up or just passed. And I call people on their birthday. Not all of them, but the people that I know. You will notice that these names have little asterisks hiding their names, phone numbers, a couple other places. That's just because we're using a demo version of our system to be showing this to you guys, but know that if you are using it, or normally when I'm in here, I see their full names and a lot of extra information. And the last thing on the homepage that I have to explain, because I don't have a visual tool for it, is that there's a pretty sophisticated way for messages to be distributed throughout your shop, whether it's to all of your staff. You can pick and choose just some of them, and then there's different ways in which people can mark that they have read that. So if you're trying to make changes and you have a larger staff, kind of like we do, it's hard to make sure and talk to everybody about it. So we can use these, and then if things aren't getting done, you can see which person didn't read it or archive it. But that's all fun. That's a homepage. But now we're going to go into a customer's account. So what we're going to do is search up the word Django right here, and we're going to hang out in his little virtual, oh, I was on that page for like 45 minutes before this started. So if you are idle for 20 minutes, it will log you out, and then you can just re-log in like that. So you can see that there's items over here that matched the title search Django, and customers over here. So like I said, as often as possible, we try to make it so your single actions can be as valuable as possible in the researches or the results that they yield. So you got items here, you got a bunch of inventory information about those items, but we're going to jump into Django's account, which is right here. You can see from this screen the date of his last transaction, how many items are set aside for him, and how much money is set aside for him. There's going to be some kind of weird verbiage that we toss around at you guys. So pulled is the term that we use in the system to denote items that are set aside for somebody. We're going to click Django's account and go into it right here, and you will see the magical digital bedroom of Django Boren. You can get some basic information about that customer up here. There's a way to keep internal correspondence about your customers right here. This is stuff that they would never see. Things like, this guy keeps sticking us with Crossed and My Little Pony comics, you know, or like, don't stare at his teeth. He's really insecure about that.
Stories.
Well, yeah, I get it.
Stories.
I get it. You dig them. We start most interactions with people at the register in our shop by asking if they're in the system or not. If they are, they're pretty familiar with it. They'll give you their last name. If they're not, and they want to be, and there's benefits for being in the system, like being able to do returns and special orders and stuff, but you can go up to contacts and hit create contact right here. And all you really need are first name, last name, email, phone number, and pronouns, and it will create empty new contact for that person. And the kind of bulk of the information that is in these accounts are in this tab of things over here. So we're going to kind of go through those. Holds is the term that we use to denote a subscription. So holds, you'll see that a variety of places. It's all the current subscriptions that that customer is subscribed to. On the right side here, you'll get an alphabetical listing of all the books that that person is subscribed to. CSA goes out and grabs the first cover of each issue in that series, and then the final cover or most recent solicited cover of that series. And there's a bunch of information about that subscription in here. You can do things like change the quantity that he is subscribed to right here if he wants more than one. You can designate a start or end issue for the subscription. So if you know somebody's going to be moving to town or leaving, you can use these to make sure their subscription doesn't cause you to order comics beyond what they're able to get. We in the CSA use a thing called Autosubs. Maybe you do something similar. Some people call it batch holding. Essentially, when a new series comes through, so for example, Absolute Batman, you can look up existing series that have subscribers and look at that list of subscribers and pick and choose from it for people that you want to move over to be subscribed to a new series. Anytime you do that, CSA leaves a little breadcrumb of information for you. So right here on Django subscriptions, you can see that he was auto-subbed to this series, and he was auto-subbed because he was subscribed to the main Batman book that was going on. This little toggle right, yeah. What do you got?
Yeah. So the Batman series, Mainline Batman's actually going to come out with a new series coming up really soon. How do you auto-subscribe people from the old Batman series into that new Batman series?
Totally. So because that is a new Batman series, it'll be a new #1, so it will have its own series code. So there's no risk of those, people would need to subscribe to the other one. But yeah, let me show you what it looks like to do that. So I'm going to open this series in a new tab right there. So this takes me to this series. And actually, I should just do it from, let's go to the members of this. So let's find an issue. This is kind of jumping a little bit ahead, but okay. So let's say that this was the first issue of that new Batman series. It would have its own page like this and everything. What I can do is go to the item actions, and this is available a variety of places on the website. But under item actions are the opportunities to auto sub. You can auto sub people to the series moving forward, or if you just want them to get the first issue, you could auto sub them to a single item, and then they could decide if they want to be subscribed. When I click this button, it pops up a little modal here, and it's prompting me to search for things over here to move the subscribers over to this one. You're seeing that we have 76 subscribers for this series right here. If I look up Batman Post Rebirth, because that's what we titled that Batman series as in our store, I can look that up. It will have each of those series here separated by cover. So throughout this whole system, it tracks issue sequence numbers, which is essentially how distributors define what cover it is. So people can be subscribed to different covers. So I have 54 subscribers to the A cover and 6 to the B cover. If I click this series to explore using the subscriptions to move over, it takes me to this screen of all of the subscribers to that Batman book and gives me a bunch of information about them. There's a field for people to have notes about auto sub preferences. So this person only wants to be auto sub to X-Men titles. It gives you extra information like the date of their last transaction, how many items are currently set aside for them, and the total dollar. All of that kind of works to give you more information about, do you want to be putting more books into somebody's file that they're not specifically asking for. But all of these people have checkboxes, and if somebody is already subscribed to that new series you're looking at, it will default to not checking them and let you know that they're already subscribed to it. But yeah, I go through here, click who I want to have selected to it, and at the bottom of the page, I can hit auto sub to check contacts. And what that will do is add all of those people to the subscription for this Absolute Batman. And you can tell by, Django will show you an item similar to this, but when I click this item's subscriptions tab, I can see all the people currently subscribed to it, and it lets me know if they were auto subbed and if they were from what series. And if there's no note there, it's because they asked to be subscribed to it themselves. You dig?
Would this also apply to like one
John.
shots?
Yeah, that's so because one shots aren't technically in a series, I would use the auto sub to single item option, and I do that a lot, like the G.I. Joe silent one shots that have been coming out, or the Godzilla versus books. I can look up a series and subscribe them to that singular one shot for sure. But I think some of those questions will also start to make sense as we move a little forward through here, and just kind of get the foundation down. So right here, again, you can turn these people's subscriptions on and off right here. It gives you any information about the last time that subscription was updated. And it lets you know of this series what the highest ordered issue is that you've done, the highest that you've received, and the highest solicited. So if you've got people who maybe 4 days before a new issue comes out wants to drop the series, you could use this chart to see if you want the person to still kind of be on the hook for buying the one they already ordered. That totally comes down to how you run your store. But as often as possible while building this, Django and I have the same belief that if you can provide as much information and helpful data as possible to people, they can then kind of continue to operate their store in the ways that they did, kind of rebuild those pieces up however they want. So
every store does everything so different from each other. It's bonkers.
And awesome. And so that was one of our problems with checking out a different point of sale system that we had explored in a store of ours for about a year. And essentially it kind of demanded that we run our store in the way that the workflow of that point of sale system was built to do. And I think if we were the kind of people who were totally down to be being told how to do stuff, we probably would not work at comic shops, because these are all just sort of extensions of how we think about stuff. Again, turn the subscription on and off here. This is an alphabetical listing of all of them. Each one of them has a checkbox, so you can do some bulk actions with them as well. But yeah, just sort of know that there's a big visual listing of all the books that a person is subscribed to in here, alphabetical. And you can turn these subscriptions on and off from a variety of places. So if you were ringing a transaction up for a customer and they were buying an issue of Absolute Batman and they weren't subscribed to it, you would see that this little toggle is there and not selected, and you could turn it on if you want from the transaction. So you can do that a lot of different places. Also, you could just go over here and search up books if somebody's talking to you and they're interested in getting subscribed to something. So I could look up Darkwing Duck and I could see the current series. I could subscribe them to the A cover or any of the alternate covers down here. And you would do
is that a Dynamite book?
Yep. That's going through a transitional phase. So anyway, that's subscriptions. You can look them up, you can add them, you can remove them. It's the way that the system tracks all of the series that a person is asked to get. And then when you check in invoices, all of that makes connections in the background, and then we'll digitally allocate them into people's polls once the invoice is locked, and you can print out pull sheets to make sure you're pulling the books for them. That's subscriptions. Requests is special orders. So it's basically anything your customers would want outside of a subscription, whether it's already come out or not come out yet. You can search things up here. Here's an example of one. Django likes glow-in-the-dark covers. So I found this and I placed an order for him so that when it comes in, it'll get pulled aside for him.
Thanks, buddy.
I'm going to look up Absolute Jeff Johns here. My allergies nose is all itchy. So if I wanted to place a special order for somebody because he's asking, he wants, for example, this Absolute Jeff Johns, I could search that item up in the special orders, and it did find a result based on this search of only one. And CSA does a bunch of information tracking in the background about how you prefer to order things. So what you can see here is that below the image, it's got a link out to that distributor's listing of this item. CSA knows that this item was available from at least these two distributors coming in through FOC data, so I could jump out to the distributor right here and take a look at it. But what is cool is because we built this after Lunar had been founded and DC had left Diamond, in the genetic makeup of this whole thing, we used a thing called preferred distribution. So essentially, we're able to say, hey, this is a DC comic. Anytime an item is from the publisher DC Comics, I would prefer to get it from Lunar. And the way that that works is when you're doing FOCs, it highlights the things you want to get and can disregard the stuff that you know you prefer to get other places. So because it knew that this is a DC comic, that we would probably want it from Lunar, it's always best to check the inventory stock status of these things using the links, but I can designate right here where it's available from. It did default to assuming I would want it to be Lunar because that's my preferred place for these people, but I can of course order them from anywhere. The system won't prevent you from doing things. It'll just try to say like, are you sure? So yeah, we'll say we want this from Lunar. I'm going to add this to custom requests, and what this is going to do is place a request for Django. We're going to come back to that when we are looking at ordering, but just sort of hold in your brain that people can special order things, and CSA caches all those requests and you can access them, and it saves them until they've been assigned to an order and sent to the distributor. So when we build an order, you'll see a kind of cache of the requests and how we allocate those to orders. But just know for now, we placed this request for Django. If he had already had a request or subscription for that item that I searched up, it would show this red text right here, preventing me from wasting another order for it. And then you can, of course, look at the requests that have already been filled. But yeah, those work just like subscriptions. When this item comes through on an invoice, it would pull it for him. Pulled is the most exciting part of a customer's file because it is a visual representation of all the items that are set aside for this customer. So from here, you can see $58 and $359. And then over here on the right side, you're getting alphabetical by date pulled listings of each thing set aside for Django. So here's the things that were pulled on July 1st. We can go down further and get previous weeks. It shows you how many copies are set aside for that customer and how many copies of that item are on the shelf. So you get to always have information about quantities at your fingertips. Again, here's the date and information about when that item was pulled. And then as you can see, there's a variety of buttons next to each of these items. So essentially they all remove the item from your customer's pull. So right here, if this was in his file and he didn't want it, I could hit this remove from polls green arrow. that removes it, would add it to the shelf quantity, and stores that information that it was canceled, but stores it as a shop action, which is like, if I auto-subbed you to a new series you don't want, that's not on you, that's on me. I can kick that back and label it as a shop action. The red one does the same thing, but it labels it a customer cancellation. So if you had a customer who had ordered a graphic novel or a subscription and they decided they didn't want it at that point, that's cool. You can kick it back, but ideally you'll be able to look at a running total of how often a customer cancels things versus a shop. And that just usually means that some conversation needs to happen about the nature of stores buying things for people in the hopes that they'll buy them. These two buttons do the same thing. They'll remove the item from his subscription, but they will simultaneously unsubscribe him from the book. Again, that's an instance of Django loving to save a fraction of a second. Why remove an item and then also have to turn off the subscription? These will do both of those. And then this will just turn the subscription off and leave the book in their file if they're saying they don't want any more, but they are going to get this one. And then all of the items have checkboxes, so there's a lot of bulk actions you can do at the bottom of your list. A lot of this stuff that you're seeing seems related explicitly to comic books. That's because that's the most complicated thing that we deal with. But if board games, candy, all sorts of things get set aside into people's accounts, it will happen automatically at check-in if they have requests or subscriptions, or you can manually put them in there. Here's some toys. The boy loves his toys and his candy.
Toy
It's
guy.
for the stories. So yeah, you can do all this, and then you can check and uncheck these, and with the click of a button, you can start a transaction for this customer. You could start an empty one that you'd have to scan everything in, or you can use this button to load all of the items automatically into his transaction, so you don't have to waste time scanning them, and you can check and uncheck them if they only are getting some at that time.
Are you suggesting that all customers, it's best to bring in like a customer profile before you ring them up as at the register for like customer transaction purposes?
Totally.
If
And what I
possible.
should have said is that anybody who doesn't want to be added to the system, you can, from any point on the website, hit this button and it will automatically start an anonymous transaction for somebody that doesn't want to be added in there. But yeah, there's a lot of benefits for being able to link a transaction or an order to a person and get that information about them. So if you don't create the contact for them, all of the things will just be done as an anonymous person. So it won't tie into your sell-through information. It won't tie into your subscription numbers.
We're working on some, if like people who bought this also bought that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Now, okay, so say a customer comes up. I don't know if they have a pull box or not, you know, just off the cuff.
Mhm.
And so they come up to the register. What's the quickest way to do a search for that customer? Is it like a phone number, or is it the name lab seen here?
Last name is the easiest way in my mind, but you can also search up emails and phone numbers. But yeah, what I would do is hit this search button, and if I type Django, I don't even need to commit the search. It will do some automatically loading of results for it. So if it was Django, or like my last name is Figley, I can search Figley.
it'll also search by like the end of a phone number. So if you get the last 4, you can type that in. So yeah, number of ways to find a person in there.
But we do
Okay, great.
start most interactions by asking people if they're in the system, if you don't recognize them, and they'll probably give you a last name and you can search it that way.
Some stores use a box number for their files, and we can activate a box search where you type box 283 and it brings that person up immediately. So.
Yeah. So yeah, there's some things there. If I hit the transaction tab, this shows me a historical listing of all of this customer's transaction. I can jump out to the transaction here and just open a new tab if I want. Here's a look at that transaction, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Here's the information about when the transaction went down, the customer's account, if it was a completed transaction or if it's still suspended, if it was a sale or a return or a void. It'll let you know which of your employees rang the transaction through, how many items were on it, and what the total dollar value of the transaction was. And again, customers don't see this whole little digital space we're in, the bedroom here. So you'll also get on that transactions tab a listing of how much money you've made off of that customer historically in the system. Purchased is a listing of all of the items that this customer has ever purchased. We just recently added that, but it's nice to be able to answer some questions. Credits super important. Credits can be added to a person's account in a variety of ways. I could just say, Django, your hair is looking fantastic today. I'm going to add
buddy.
$5 to your account. And I could just add a store credit for $5. And it asks for a PIN number so it can track which of your employees is creating credits for people. They can also get added in a variety of other ways. If somebody wants to do a return, it will prompt you to do that return for store credit. If you would rather give them cash, you can. We just try to make sure cash comes in and stays in. And a thing that was on our wish list forever using other point of sale systems was our request shelf, the special orders. We would order things for people, and a lot of them would never remember to come in and get them. So we were wasting a lot of money there. So a thing that was early on our checklist was to be able to handle prepayment for things. Django will show you how to do that when he rings up a transaction. But if somebody had a prepayment, it would essentially be under their credits listing as a gift certificate tied to a specific person, tied to a specific item. And when that item comes in within a transaction, a variety of other places will prompt you to redeem it for that credit. And if that item is ever canceled, you can untether that credit from that item and it can just become a generic store credit in their account. Reviews, not important to this, but again, you can store those reviews for things. Portal. We're working on a customer facing side for all of this. Actually, we've got some people beta testing it and using it now, but essentially it's a way for your customers to get on to their kind of your listing of the website, and they can look at pre-orders or alternate covers that are going to be coming out, and they can place requests or pay for their subscriptions through that. We've long since wanted to make sure that people could be looking at variant covers from their toilet, because that seems like where everybody wants to get an art churn variant. Buying, this is, I'm not sure if you all do like buy back issues or collections from people. We do.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and we've been
all
wanting
the
to
time.
we wanted to make sure that process was as easy as possible. So you can, under a person's account, add a collection. So it'll essentially create an empty collection of items that you could be bringing in to make evaluations on. And I'm going to show you what one of those looks like. It gives it a collection ID, and then it's in their digital account so that you can make sure you always get that stuff. Nothing gets lost. There's also paperwork within here that you can print out that we also give them to fill out, so we can make sure everything's always above board. But when you are building these collections, as you're going through to make an offer, you can add the items onto this order and designate how much you would charge for it. And then CSA can know what percentages you like for offers for cash or store credit. You can go through this and add the items, and it will find your overall offer for the end of it to offer the person. Right here was a $560 cash. But what's particularly cool is you can then track the sell-through of the items in that collection. And even more cool, obviously, I would say evaluating and grading comics is one of the more high-level tasks. So in our store, Django or myself or Colette will kind of go through, add items to a collection digitally to make an offer. And then if the person buys that, we can have one of our lower level employees take the box or boxes and open up this collection that was accepted. And in that move, they'll already have the grades and prices made here. So you can hand that off to some people who are maybe newer.
So much time.
Exactly.
Okay, so this makes sense if you're like, say you're going and you're taking in a collection, let's say 30 books, and you add each book, but you put the percentage of how much you offer. I can see the 30% right there.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do if you say, okay, same 30 books, we're just looking at them just on a table, and I'm saying like, I'm going to offer 150 bucks. How do I put that kind of offer into the system as a group offer?
Totally. You can create a custom item at any given point. So you could hit this button and say short box of mangled water damaged comics. And so you can be as granular with adding singular items in here as you want. You can also, what Django, who does most of our collection evaluation, will do is he'll pull out all the keys and get those prices in like this. And then all the leftover stuff, he'll sort of say like short box of mid-range comics. This short box I would give $35 for.
So
and
if you go all the way up there, Jeff, I think he's asking, you have the offer with a percentage there. It's quantity, condition, your price, percentage, or you can do the offer dollar amount. And that's just a flat dollar amount in the blue area there.
Yeah, so you could designate whatever you want there in terms of how you want to divide the items up and then designate those prices. But yeah, a lot of them for us are low level enough things that we're just sort of like, we just want the keys so you can even take this back.
In fact, please.
In fact, please. But we can talk more about that a little bit later on. But here you can then see accepted or declined collections, link out to them, the date of it, and what you've sold through for them. And the last important thing in a person's account is their settings. So there's some kind of, dull stuff like Django's middle name. But there's some other important things in here like account settings. So this is where you are able to limit the amounts of subscriptions that people are allowed to have if they've stuck you with books in the past. Something that we haven't mentioned yet. Django and I built a thing called delinquency parameters. So in the interest of being able to catch accounts that are kind of a gamble as to whether or not they're actually going to come in and get them, we built some flags to throw up when you've got a customer who's either got a lot of money set aside for them or really old items. So if you were to use the system, when we bring you in, you get to kind of pick a default dollar and time range for creating contacts. So in our store, there's a maximum pull value of $50 and they're delinquent after 30 days whenever we create a new contact. But each of those contacts, I can go into their settings and extend that if I need to. So if you've got somebody who gets every Marvel and DC comic but only comes in like 3 times a year, obviously theirs would be higher. But what this will do is anytime this Django character has more than $200 or an item older than 60 days in his account, it'll flag it as delinquent. And you can always do report searches for your delinquent accounts and how much money is set aside for them, filter it however you want, and then get a hold of those people. Can be a real helpful way to catch those things earlier because you got the person who only gets Saga, so it looks like a small file because it's 9 issues, but 9 issues of Saga is like 2 years worth. So being able to identify those quickly is super helpful. People are able to designate how important condition is to them, and then this ties into the pull sheets that you use. When Penguin started distributing comics, you probably remember that they were sending out a lot of damages and they didn't have a system built to replace damages yet. So we were getting a lot of damaged comics that we couldn't get better copies of. So we asked our customers how important condition is. A huge number were very open about just like, I'm going to roll it up and put it in my pocket on the way out, so it doesn't matter. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of people who care a lot. So you can look at your pull sheets while you're pulling your books, and next to each person's name, it'll let you know how important condition is. So if you do have damages you can't replace, you can get those to the people who won't mind, and you can get the really nice ones to the people who do care. Autosubs, which we talked about, people can have a blanket opting in and out of that. So they can say no autosubs, and that way they'll never be included on those autosub searches, and it'll just default to not checking them if you got people who are good about doing their pre-orders. And you can even have discounts be applied for people if they're buying things that are coming out of their file. So if you want to reward pre-ordering and subscriptions, you could have discounts. CSA from a transaction, you'll see here, is able to identify if items are coming out of their account or if it's something that's bought off the shelf. This is where you would also designate if it's a customer or a distributor or an overstock location. And then there's the way for you to do discounts on a customer level, on a store level, on a category level. You can do discounts in a lot of really flexible ways. If you want everything in the store to be 25% off for Free Comic Book Day, or if you want all graphic novels from the publisher DC to be, a percentage off, a lot of flexibility there. So just know as proof of concept, there's a lot that you can do there. Staff settings, yeah, that's kind of the main thing. It's a huge amount of like upfront information, but we sort of try to show this contact information and item information to sort of set the table for you guys. And then as we move further, you'll sort of start to see how all of that stuff connects and whatnot. It's crazy to like give people a rundown on something as complex as a comic book point of sale system, because we spend all of our time in it, but it probably just looks like a weird elementary school whiteboard to some other people. So do you guys have any other questions before Django shows you what it looks like to ring a transaction up from a person's account?
When you're talking about setting discounts for things like pulled or else, is there a way to set a threshold for, let's say, if we offer a discount for someone who gets 10 active holds, would I be able to do that, or is it?
It's not quite that nuanced, and the main reason is like defining what an active hold actually is pretty tricky. Does Saga count when it's on hiatus, for example? Does a trade paperback count if it only comes out once every 8 months? So we kind of have the tools to choose the discounts, but if you have like really specific shop rules, that's something that you have to kind of maintain.
When Django and I took or inherited the comic shop, that was the model that they had. Well, yeah, you gave him cancer. That was the model they had used. The number of books that you were subscribed to had an effect on your percentage discount. And at that time, we were only able to get things from Diamond. We're over in the Seattle area using CSA and kind of the tracking shipment information, costing information in here. We were able to realize that our effective discount at Diamond was like 38% after shipping and stuff. So if we were, it was even worse.
Like 28%.
Yeah. So like our Diamond discount was insane. So our, the previous owners had been giving a 10 or 20% discount to people getting a lot of books, which meant that they weren't making any money on those books. So yeah, we tried to honor that volume or that way of doing it. But yeah, we were sort of running into automated like retiring of series, or do they go on hiatus? If they're on hiatus, when do those numbers count towards things, like Django said? So yeah, so it's not quite that nuanced.
But you do have easy control over it. So if you decide somebody doesn't meet whatever your store's rules are, you can switch it.
Yeah, you could totally look at their subscriptions and count them and see how many they've got and say, okay, cool, you get a 25% discount. And that would just be automated in there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you, John. Oh, we got Jason in. Hey, Jason.
Jason's here.
Big Jason fan.
He's watching on the iPhone, I think.
I like
Nice.
it.
Squinting
I
at
have
all
I have
those
a quick
little
question.
words.
Yeah, what do you got?
So, well, actually, I have a couple of questions, but the first one, you had mentioned you're saying you're working on a new stuff that you're adding into this, and it's really more of a general question, and I know you may get to this at some point. Say we sign up with you guys, we're working with you guys. What do like future improvements like that look like? Is that just part of the packages, you get all these new improvements as they come out if you want them, type of thing, or is there like it's if you want this sort of add-on, it's that? Do you sell DLC is what I'm asking you here?
Eventually we probably will.
Okay.
But it's pretty important to us to have everything you need to run your comic store at the base price, right? So one thing we'll look at in items is we'll gloss over consignment module that we have. Not something that comes with the base setup because most stores don't need it. We built it for one specific store. If you want it, we can charge you a few extra bucks and you get it. But yeah, the goal is to have what you need to run a comic store at the base price point. And then if there's something crazy or, we've been bouncing around some ideas for like some super high end things for multi-store operations and stuff like that. But we want to help and not step on comic stores.
We had been exploring a point of sale system for a satellite store a number of years ago, and we were impressed by the low base package price. But it also demanded us to have a specific type of scanner and like kind of a specific type of print. All of that was like our credit card processor. So for us, we try to make your store stay as much your store as it has always been, and hopefully just be building tools that can kind of add on to you guys. But yeah, we're not trying to gouge people to get basic aspects of it.
Sure. No,
we're getting really close to everything that we've sort of envisioned for the base package. A couple things that we still need to push out to feel like we've hit that milestone, but everything you see here is part of it.
And Andy, we are always working on it and kind of taking bug reports from people and adding things. So there is a frequent update of problems and doing all that. That's something that we take care of. You wouldn't really even notice it, but Django will write up essentially patch notes so you can see any of the improvements or things that are added in there. But yeah.
You're answering all my questions without me even having to ask them. I appreciate
Nice.
that. But that was going to be but you hinted at it. You said that there was one that, what if I do have a special request? Like I want it to be able to do X, Y, Z. Is that just sort of, obviously it's going to be a case by case basis, and it's going to be,
Yeah,
if it's a crazy request.
you send us that note, and if it's something that is either super easy to do or something that's going to improve it for a lot of stores, that's a no-brainer. We'll put it on the roadmap.
Gotcha.
If it's something that's just for your store, generally I say no immediately, and then 3 hours later I'm like, oh wait, we mostly have all those tools. I can give them a workaround.
Gotcha. Okay.
There
Okay.
have been a couple things that we just couldn't really figure out at this stage, but for
Sure.
the most part, feature requests are either happen quickly or get on a list to happen eventually.
Okay. Last question I had just so far is that there was that button when you were on there and it said kill this with extreme prejudice.
Ooh, yeah.
What are the
Yeah.
other
Favorite
options under
button.
that?
I'm going through individually and deleting only subscriptions or only special orders or only removing polls. What this does is it just basically cancels this file and makes a note that says this guy screwed us for $40 or whatever. It does a
Gotcha.
bunch of little things all at once, but you can do any one of those things.
It's
individually.
basically, we've kicked this guy out of the store. Get rid of
Or
everything. that
we
he's
never
worked
want to
with,
let him
or
subscribe
whatever.
again without having a very serious conversation and probably a $30 or $40 deposit.
Yeah. So if, obviously I'm looking at this from the worst case scenario, but this guy steals from you, literally steals money.
Right.
And for whatever reason, he's bought stuff from me from the first, whatever. So Ben comes in and he steals a bunch of money from me. And then I know he does it all the time.
What's
And
he gonna
then,
do?
and I decided to kill his file, right? How do I keep him, or how do I keep Jason from just signing him up tomorrow when I'm not
So
around?
it'll warn you as you create a new contact if there's a duplicate email address,
Okay.
so that you can check the other one. You could make a contact note here and make it an urgent contact note, so that if somebody tries to
Oh.
ring him up under his name, this big red thing comes up and says this guy's not allowed in the store anymore.
Got it.
All that kind of depends on him not lying to you about whether his first
course.
name is Ben or Benjamin.
Of
When he
course,
tries
yeah.
to sign up for a new account, right?
He's sneaky and his first name's Harold, so it doesn't.
Yeah.
whole thing.
Tricky.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I think Ben had a question too. I jumped
Yeah.
in front of you.
Shoot, Ben.
Yeah, so you were talking about necessary features to run a shop. So what I'm seeing so far with the buying option and being able to list comics in that way, as well as the comics coming in from the distributors, I'm assuming there's an inventory option as well that we can punch in all of our 30,000 plus whatever comic books that we have already in the shop.
Yeah.
But my CPA has also requested that she wants to know how much our cost of goods sold is versus our inventory. So then you got that added layer to things.
Yeah, we'll get to that stuff in the next couple steps, and then at the
Okay.
tail end, I can show you some of our costing and aging reports that we have built in.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
None of those. I think all those exist already.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay, so Jeff showed us how people work, and now I'll show you how we ring them up. Like he mentioned, if somebody just walks in the door and they're not in the system, don't want to be in the system, you can do an anonymous transaction. That'll just let you ring somebody up. If you want to find a person and ring them up for whatever they have in their hands, you hit new transaction here and it'll start a new transaction. But my favorite way to do it is to do a new transaction from pulls, so that I don't have to scan everything that we had set aside for them. So we can see here, this guy's got a bunch of stuff in pulls. Looks like he brought some toys to his friends when he went to visit them. Maybe bought some candy bars for the airplane ride. I know that because he is me. And so we're going to hit new transaction from pulls. It's going to ask me for my PIN as the person who's ringing up. And that's mostly just to track. Oh, it's been a minute since I logged in too. That's just to track who's doing the transaction. So if you have any questions, you can ask the right person. And what it did is it grabbed all of those items, it put them in the transaction here for us. It automated any discounts that they had on their account. And because this guy is marked to always get current bags and boards with his purchase, he's got 44 bags and boards. That's one bag and board for every single periodical that's in here. On each line, you can see that we have an image of the item. We've got the quantity. We've got the title, a little bit of metadata. You can fill this up with more data, but I like it a little bit slimmer. And then you can subscribe or unsubscribe people right from this page while you're checking them out. If you want to change the discount on any specific line, you can edit that right there. You can put this thing back in their file with the red X, or you can put it back in the shelf with the arrows. Same as before. The green ones mean no harm, no foul. The red ones mean I'm a little bit mad at you for doing this. Normally, we would have a barcode scanner. I don't bring one home because I separate my life from work a little bit better than Jeff, who did the FOC on that train in Scotland on his honeymoon. But I'm just going to search for Batman 125 here. If you scan that with a barcode, it'll know exactly what the thing is, and it'll just dump it into the transaction. Because there are multiple results for Batman 125, it's going to present us with all the options. I'm just going to pick this top one to throw it in as an example. So now we have that one in there, and you can see that didn't get discounted because this person's discounts are based on things that came from their polls only. That's a setting that you can adjust. So that's a real easy way to add an item that you already have. You can also add a custom item. So if somebody brings up a weird broken action figure, and we're going to put it in the toy category, and it's $5. So we can add this to the transaction right now. If it's something that we think they're going to bring up later, we can also click this button to add it to the item catalog so that the next time we search broken action figure, it shows up. I'm not going to do that because this is our live site, and we don't need a whole bunch of broken action figures in there every time we do a demo. But you can see that because it's a custom item, it looks a little bit different than the others. It's blue. It's got, you can put some extra notes in there for it to describe what it is. I'm assuming you guys sell back issues, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yes.
So we have brought in the Grand Comics database, which is about 2.5 million items. So if I search Tomb of Dracula 10 in here, it'll bring up everything that matches that series name over here and everything that matches that specific issue over here. And we've got two different ways of looking at this. We've got the ones that are in inventory. So we've processed them. Maybe we brought them in through a collection. Maybe we just added them to inventory. And we can sell that by adding it to the transaction here. Or we just have a box of stuff. Somebody found this in the back of that box and they want to buy it before we've added it to inventory. We can sell it, just price it on the fly here. So let's say it's missing 4 pages. So we're going to sell it for $50. So that adds it to the transaction. And now that customer knows exactly which issue they picked up when they were in your store. And you've got a good record of which series you're selling. So I'll go through our back issue sales periodically and just see like, oh, it looks like somebody bought 30 copies of Batman. I better check the Batman back issues and restock them from the warehouse. And then the last way you can add items to the transaction is over here under the quick links. You get to choose what's over here, but it's things like Pokemon singles, just little things that don't have barcodes. You just click the button over here and it adds it onto the transaction. Pokemon singles is kind of a special item because we have it marked as price on the fly. So you can edit that price anytime you want. Just makes it easy to sell bulk things that you don't need to inventory on a granular level. And then the other thing that Jeff mentioned is we can do prepayments during the transaction. So let's say we don't actually have this Batman second printing in stock, but we're going to order it. We just click prepay here and it'll let us place the order. So we choose where we're going to order it from. We can tell it whether we want to get a reminder or just catch it next time it comes up on FOC or gets checked in. We can put any notes in there. And then when we create this prepayment, it creates the order for us to place. It also creates basically a store credit that's tied to that customer for that item. And when you ring them up for that item next time, it says, hey, it looks like we've got a credit available for this specific item. So let's see here. If we go down, 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 we can apply bulk discounts. So if you want to apply to all of these things and you want to say, yeah, I told them I'd give them a super deal. They get it for $1 each. You can discount it down to $1 each. Or you can uncheck some of them. When you're tendering an item, you can just click a quick tender down here if it's cash. So it's $336.80. Maybe they're going to give you 340 bucks. You click that and it knows what to do over here. You can split the tender, so you can do some on card and some on cash. We don't require that you use any specific credit card processor, so you get to use whatever you want. You just type it into your terminal and tell CSA that you took that money. Someday we'll probably integrate something like Stripe, but what we've discovered is every comic store wants us to integrate with their special flower credit card processor, and that's a big task.
Yes, it is. That was going to be one of my questions for you is
Yeah.
do you have a preferred? How do you do that? Well, you just, so you're
Whatever
basically
you
just
want.
saying this has been paid. You're just saying I ran it through, it came back approved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just like you're taking cash, right?
Gotcha.
I promise I took two times.
Are there multiple instances of splitting payments? Like some people, like kids will have a bunch of gift cards and things like that. Can we keep going? Okay.
Yeah, you can split payments as many times as you want. If they have credit under their account, it'll show you each different credit amount that they have available. So you can cash in the 30 cents and then the $5 if you want. And you can just string that along. It won't lock the transaction until you've taken enough to pay for the whole thing. So
good.
I got two questions.
Yeah.
Okay, I see that supplies block over there on the left. Is that basically the bag and board fee? Is that what that is?
Yeah, so we charge 35 cents per bag and board. And so that's that. This does the math each time you load the page.
Got it.
And we move those over here just because they take up space, and it's nice to see at a glance how many you're going to need from the top of the page.
Okay, sounds good. And then my second question has to do with gift cards. I was looking at the drop down. How do you do gift cards on this system?
So you can sell a gift certificate up here. You just punch in the dollar amount and scan a barcode that you can pre-generate. And then when you tender the transaction, it activates that gift card.
Okay.
And if you've got a gift card in front of you that was rung through CSA, you go here, you scan it, it looks in the system, it validates it, it lets you ring it up for up to that amount. If you have stuff coming over from an old system, you can tender a legacy gift certificate. It can't do the validation part. So you, the human, has to be like, yeah, I promise there's 60 bucks on here, and then punch in the 60 bucks. So you could, there'll be a little time where you may have legacy gift certificates or legacy store credits that you have to deal with manually. But if it's in the system, it's all pretty automated in there.
Cool.
Okay, let's see here. Oh, there's one other thing here. So we have each item can have a number that you enter, and you have a default, and then you can override it. And it'll tell you on the transaction if somebody already bought that item. So we built this because we had this guy, Jonah, who would come into the store, and he would come in on a Wednesday and buy his limit of the hot comic. Then he would come in on the next people's shift on a Thursday, and he would buy his limit of the hot comic. So he was just, and he knew the rule, wasn't supposed to do it, whatever. We don't have a system to deal with it, so we just try to keep an eye out for it. But now when we ring him up, we get a notice if he's already bought it. And if it's a book that we care about, we can give him a hard time about it. The positive side of that is that we also have a customer named James who can literally never remember if he bought something last week or not. And so now we can catch it before he has to do a return next week. So you can add that.
More information is always better.
Yeah, that's kind of how running this whole thing. Comics have so much information, and transactions have so much information. So figuring out where and when and how to present that to be helpful to a store is kind of the main puzzle that we're dealing with on a minute by minute basis here. Is all that track? You guys have any other questions about transactions?
I don't. I like how that flows. I like that.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm pretty good too.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to void this so we don't confuse the closers any more than we already do. And we're going to go look at an item. Oh, I'm going to go into this Batman Dark Patterns. I never choose an item that has every single thing I want to show people. So we're just going to start here. That's going to be pretty good. So items, another huge glut of information that we have to show off in a graceful way. We've got the image over here. You can always regenerate the image if you don't like the way it looks. You can ask the distributors if they've got an update. That happens automatically during certain times of the cycle. You can also replace an image and make sure that it never gets replaced automatically. So if you don't like this, you can upload your own copy. And then it's also showing us whatever variants it thinks exists down here. The rest of this is pretty similar to contacts in the way that it's laid out. So you got a title up here. These clouds and stop signs and stuff are part of our Shopify integration. So technically that's in beta. We've got a dozen or so stores using it. If you're a big Shopify store, we can figure out how to get you in that beta as well. But you can ignore those whenever you see them for most of this. Down here, we've got just really basic, category, publisher, issue number, whether it's a main cover, a jump out to eBay, which is super helpful, especially on a Tuesday. When we're pricing up variant covers, we'll use that jump out to eBay to decide on prices for things. And then the date it was first in stock, or the date that we think it will first be in stock if it hasn't come in yet. Some creator information. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of your inventory management for this specific item. So you've got the price and the MSRP. You can edit either one of those. When you edit them, you can configure the site to require a PIN so that you know who made those edits. That's something you turn on and off depending on what projects you're working on. Sometimes you don't want to have to take that slow down, but we found that instead of texting all 13 employees, hey, did you change the price on this comic last week? Knowing exactly who did it is pretty helpful. This is the button to price it on the fly, like those Pokemon singles, so that you can punch in a number real easy. In stock also requires a pin to edit if you want. And then the quantity you have in stock minus the number in pulls minus the number in overstock equals the number that's on the shelf. So that's always a calculation that we're doing. Anytime you see how many you have on the shelf, it's the calculation that's kind of figuring out what that number is. Ever sold is how many you've sold. Ever received is how many you've received. All that makes sense. You received 56, you sold 53, you got 3 left. Minimum point we'll go into a little bit more later. It's not really used for single issues for the most part, but it's a way to say, I wish I always had 10 copies of Watchmen in stock or on the way. And then when you're placing your order, you say, get me up to my minimum point. It does the math for you. And then the quantity, the infinite quantity here just suppresses some errors. Like I don't bother to track how many bags and boards we actually have in stock. So if we sell below 0, who cares, right? We just tell it to be infinite and it won't yell at us. Down here, we've got the specs. These are all just, barcodes, descriptions, release dates. This is where you would change that purchase limit. So if you wanted to have a book that doesn't warn you that somebody's buying multiple copies, you just change it right there. The only really interesting thing here is the transaction pop-up text. So I was on a vacation a little while ago and I came back and there was a book that somebody had put a sign on the shelf that said the first one is cover price, each additional one is $14.95 because it was a valuable book and we wanted to have some for the not speculators. And I didn't know that. I had just shown up. And when I rang the book in, it popped up and it told me that. And I told the customer and they're like, oh yeah, that's fine. I still want to. So we were able to communicate that from whoever made that decision to whoever was ringing up without having to have a staff meeting about it. The distributors, so we started doing CSA after distribution fractured, which means that we are natively sort of built to do various distributions. So if this was a Marvel book, you might see Diamond and Lunar on this list. If this was a Marvel trade paperback, you might see Diamond, Lunar, Ingram, eBay, or whatever, right? It's nice to have each of these separate because every book or every distributor can have a different stock code or a different discount rate or be available or not available out of sync with each other. So this just kind of gives you control over that. And you can see that we've put in some time to say that Lunar is our preferred distributor for this book or for this publisher. So it's green. If we were looking at it on a different distributor, it would be yellow, telling us that we already have a place that we prefer to order from. Again, information, not forcing you to do something. The orders tab is just every time you've ordered or a customer has ordered, and it tells you, the received status for those. Invoices and cost. So this is a little bit of your costing information, Ben. You can have a base cost that you assign to any given item. You can also have it calculate the most recent cost or the average cost. And those are based on good information coming in from your invoices. So over time, that gets a little more accurate as you go. Eventually, we'll probably also add like the ability for you to say, I want 6 month or I want 1 year average cost, whatever's relevant to you. Because comics are just totally chaotic. We have to build this super stupid, flexible stuff. And then down here, it shows us the invoices that this book was received on. So it looks like on February 11th, we received 56 out of 55, but 2 of them were damaged. And then later we received the other 2. So just kind of shows us a history of how those things got into the ecosystem. The series is going to show us all the books in that series and how many we have on the shelf or in pulls or whatever. So if somebody walks in and they're like, hey, I want to get a full run of this book, you can see if it's even worth looking on the shelf for it. And then the holds are everybody who's subscribed or has been subscribed, and you can turn those on and off from within here. Hold is everybody who has it in their file or has had it in their file, and you can turn those on and off from in here. And then transactions, this is really similar to the transactions that Jeff showed you before. All right, we do a lot of testing, so I'm all these red ones. In the customer record, but it's telling you also how many of this item were bought and whether it was from pulls or from the shelf, which is a nice little bit of information to have sometimes. The FOC charts, this is just a duplicate of something that Jeff's going to go into a little bit deeper in a bit here, but it's just kind of intricate historical sales history for that series. And then adjustments. This is where we're tracking price changes. Anytime inventory changes, we're noting when and why. If an employee did this, it would say who it was and why they did it. This is kind of a proof of concept for us. So we can track anything that happens in here, but it's not quite worth it to track every single thing that changes. So if there's ever anything that, like a mystery that we're trying to solve, we'll just throw it in here so we can figure out where and when things are happening. And then we have that added to our arsenal here. Do you guys sell Magic or Pokemon?
Yeah, sure do.
Okay. So bundles, if this was a bundled item, it lets us describe like a box of Magic contains 36 packs, right? So you just say this box has 36 packs, and then you can unbundle it whenever you want. So you reduce your box count and you increase your pack count.
Got it.
So just a quick way to sort of manage that inventory. You could also use it to build like, here's a bundle of the first 3 issues of Batman Dark Patterns. And then you can kind of track down where those issues are. You know, they're in inventory, but they're bundled up together. So you can try to find them through that.
That's cool. We do that with some of the shorter series where we sell it as a series.
Yeah. Yeah. For a little while, we were making catch-up bundles. So if it was like a 12-issue series and we had 1 through 5, we would bundle up 1 through 5 and say, you should check out this Tom King book that hasn't quite caught on yet. Reviews, like Jeff mentioned, we do our podcast and we do reviews. The main thing we do with this now is push these numbers up to Shopify if it's 8.0 or above. And then we can make a collection in Shopify of Django's in-stock picks, for example. Cool. So tags are really boring and also really powerful.
Yeah.
So we get these in when we do the import of the item, we populate the tags. I'm on the Comet Standard group through Comics Pro. We're getting distributors and publishers to start giving us better and better data in reliable ways, right? Diamond used to do it. Now they don't really, and everybody else is kind of struggling to figure out those formats. So we've already got Penguin Random House sending out files that are compatible. Lunar's working on it. We're hoping to get Universal up to speed as well. Ignition is going to be the first publisher that's fully Comet compliant. But the idea there is that when they send us data, we'll be able to populate this in a trustworthy way. And the goal here, we're just sort of setting the table for it. It's not done because we don't trust the data 100%. But the goal is to have it so that you can say this customer wants to be subscribed to every Peach Momoko cover in the X-Men family that costs less than $30. And then you're prompted to order that at FOC, and you're prompted to set it aside for them when it comes in. So subscribing people to rules rather than subscribing them to just a boring old series code. Like I said, it's not there yet. Our benchmark is kind of when we see that everybody's sending us Brian Michael Bendis's name in the same format, then we think we can probably trust it. But we're setting the table for that. So that's super exciting. And you can also use tags for other things. You can use it to tell you where things are in the store. So you can add a shelf location and say this is in Andy's picks or whatever. Consignment is one of the things that we talked about where it's an extra add-on. Basically just tracks your consignees' items and what you owe them and what you've paid them and what agreement you have for the percentage of their cut. The portal is basically like the pull box thing that we're working on. We've got a couple stores using that. We're working on some technological stuff to make sure that it doesn't impact everybody else when we flood the servers with store customers as well as store employees. But yeah, that's just a little bit of control there. And then the web is, again, for Shopify. The only real interesting thing there is that you can have a different price online than you have in store, which we use to sort of control who gets a great deal from us, whether it's somebody in Florida or somebody in our store at that very moment. So. That's items. Does that all make sense? Anybody have any questions? I saw Andy taking some notes, but I'll bet Ben's got something.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure Andy's got a whole bunch of notes on this. Yeah, no, I think you covered most of it there. So the bundling, for example, it makes sense when you have an item that breaks down into multiples for the packs. But how do you add, like, say you were doing a comic run, say the X-Men 1 through 5 or whatever. How do you add some like individual items that are completely unrelated to, say, like a bulk?
So you can just add them however you want. So you just search up the items and you can have multiple items in various quantities. So if you got like an action figure assortment pack, right? That's got 2 Wolverines and 2 Cyclops and 1 Puck. You can just tell it this bundle contains 2 Wolverines and 2 Cyclops and 1 Puck. Okay. And then when you unbundle that case, it turns it into those single items.
And in some situations, Ben, you'd also need to create items. You know, like when we get magic booster boxes in, we need to create that pack item because we don't order the pack item. So yeah, there's a large variety. You can create a custom item that is the parent bundle, or you can create sub things, or you can just make a group and essentially eclectic things. Like these are all volume 1s of image that we make a box bundle of or something.
Okay, thank you.
And do you price the bundle, or does it inherit its price from whatever's in it, or how do you do that?
The bundle is its own item, so you assign a price to the bundle up here, and then down here, I think that we added it so that it will do the math and tell you what the MSRP is for the individual items combined. But you don't have to. You're not forced to use that. You can put whatever you want in there.
Yeah, I could see that for like, I mean, it's a silly example, but an example we use is we sell stickers for 25 cents, right? But you can get 5 for $1. So individually they're 25 cents, but a bundle of 5 stickers and it takes 5 out of the inventory, et cetera.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions about items, Andy?
So I saw you had some adjustments in there when you had like sold this or whatever. I see some of them say inventory snapshot. I'm assuming you also have, like, you're putting that comment in there. Is that system generated comment? Or
so at midnight on the 1st of every month, it does a snapshot of what you have in stock at that moment.
Okay.
So we did that because I always forget to do it at the end of the year. And so I was like, it's cheap enough to store that. We're just going to do it at the end of every month.
Gotcha. So if I was going to go in and make an adjustment for it, like I worked all day and I walked by this one comic book and I just happened to see it. And then the next day I noticed it's not there, but I also didn't sell it. I know it got stolen.
Right. So you just go up here, enter your PIN, reduce the quantity, say stolen, and it would show up right down here.
Okay.
As you making that edit.
And in response to your question, Andy, those comments are auto-generated. That's not something you need to type in to have annotated.
Yeah. Right. But you could put a typed in comment is what I'm saying. Okay. All right, cool. So what about, and this may be something you go over later, I don't know, so forgive me if I'm jumping ahead. What about sort of like initial inventory? So if we start with you guys tomorrow, how do I get what I have in the system without having to
So
go, well, this one is that, so I'll type that in,
and search
Yeah.
that. Do you have any digital inventory anywhere?
No, well, no, we don't.
Okay.
We
Okay.
we're new enough to where we haven't had the um we haven't had
You
the
just have.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll look at that really quick
Okay.
here. You can do an inventory update. So this is a pain in the butt. I would recommend doing CSA for a little while before you jump in here because it's just kind of a hassle. But
Got it.
what we would do is we would start you guys with our store's catalog at MSRP and zero inventory for everything.
Okay.
And then when you're ready to do a big inventory update, you can do it by category. So if you go through the store, you scan every single item that is categorized as a board game, and then you create an adjustment project and you upload those scans. And CSA will say, hey, I recognize all these things. Here's some things that you scanned that I can't match up. So you got to do a little dance there. And then it says, I'm going to set inventory for these to the numbers you scanned. And then here are things that I think you have, or I think you have negative copies of, that I'm going to set to 0 when you commit this. And so it just does that big adjustment all at once for that category. And then you've got that category inventoried and you can move on to another category. And you can do
Okay.
multiple categories at once. We usually do games and then comics and then books, all the different categories for books, and then kind of
Yeah.
everything else sort of one at a time.
Yeah, and we have a decent amount of inventory that I know is not going to be, I mean, just because we do more than comics, we do more than games and things like, we do stuff without UPCs,
Right.
like
Right.
it just exists as a thing. So I mean that I can see where that would be, I'm sure, going to be a challenge to get it
Yeah, I
into
mean,
the
you'll
system, but
just we've built in some streamlined things. Like if there's something that it doesn't recognize and you have to figure out what did I just what did the system not recognize? It'll
yeah,
tell you the 5 barcodes it scanned before and the 5 barcodes it scanned after. So
know where you
it's
were.
like, yeah, this was in the middle of that shelf, so it's probably this weirdo zine that I had filed with superheroes or
Gotcha.
whatever. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
When it comes to like comic inventory, and say you have like 18 copies of like What If #1 and they're varied conditions, does
Mhm.
it just show up as you have 18 copies and then you variable the price?
We'll go into back issues near the end of everything, but basically it shows that you have 18 individual items for back issues. For main category or main catalog items, you can carry multiple quantities, but because back issues are all their very own special damage or whatever,
Correct.
you have 18 instances of the same book.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to turn this over to Jeff and let him talk
Yeah.
about orders.
Let's do this.
Relinquish
So,
control, is that the word they use?
yeah, up to this point, we've set the table. We've done a lot of the work to explain a lot of the basic functioning of CSA. So now we're going to start going into some things that show where those things connect. So here we've got the old home page, which I'm sure you all remember. And what I'm going to do is hit orders here. And first what I'm going to show you is what it would look like to create a replenishment order for Lunar, for example. We'll do Lunar. And then after that, we're going to take a look at the FOC. So what I can do is hit create order up here, and I get to select which distributor of my loaded distributors I am selecting for this one. I'm going to type Lunar so I don't have to find it. There's 3 main types of orders. There's custom, which is what we use for basically everything that's not an FOC or an initial order. So your replenishments, all that stuff. And then there's FOCs, and then pre-order is for loading in initial orders. But with Diamond going the way of the cuckoo, I think I was the last one that really demanded us do initial orders. So while we still encourage people to load in their initial orders at the beginning of each month, so you have good information about all your items, we haven't been placing initial orders. So I'm going to hit custom here, and I'm going to hit create order. And what this will do is load up an empty order that's got some checklist items over here that you get to customize yourself, but it's an empty order that CSA is listing as prep because it hasn't been locked and sent yet, and it knows that it's headed for lunar distribution. And because I've designated that it's heading for lunar, there's a lot of cool little hooks within building the order that we can now use. But the first thing that I would want to do is consult the requests that CSA has stored aside for people. So if you remember, we placed that absolute Jeff Johns one for Django earlier. If I click review requests, it's going to show me a listing of all the current items that people have requests for that have not been associated with an order and locked. So here is all the things people want that haven't been added to an order and placed at a distributor yet. And within each of these items, you'll see some color coding and some information about the items. So here you can see that this item's got a yellow background. That's the way that the system indicates that this is not the preferred distributor to order this that I'm working in right now. The order notes is where that drop down showing where you saw that it was available from. It automatically populates in the order notes which distributor you found there. People can leave notes as well, like this person said, counter request, keep an eye out for additional printings, because they knew that this one was out of print. This one is a little wonky. I'm not sure why they had selected this to be ordered at lunar. I think that was an error on one of our staff's part. But when I go through here, I can see a lot of these are for Ingram. Here's a Penguin one, but specifically here's that absolute Jeff Johns we placed the request for Django for earlier. It says that it's for Django. It's got one request here. We know it's from lunar. So if I hit a 1 right there, it will add 1 copy to the order to fill that request. If I also, in this moment, would like to have some for my shelf, I can hit the quantity I want there. And let me move my faces. When I close this and refresh the page, all of the changes I would have just made will be added to the order. You can see they're separated between shelf quantities and request filling quantities. And I would then mark that off the checklist. If I've got things I know I want to order, I can always just search up here. Let's do Watchman Absolute. If I search that, I could pull up all items that would match that search. Here's an instance of a previous printing of this book being deactivated. You can do that sort of stuff anytime you want. And it shows you the different matches or printings of this book that could have come up, and I can add them to the order from here. But more fun than just doing that are some of these tools like see sold items by date. So if I click this, it is going to immediately create this report. And while you are seeing this report from within the order, these are not items that were just added to the order or anything. They are showing me all the items that I sold in the last week. So again, it's a report of everything you've sold in the last week. And what it does is it shuffles up to the top of that list all items that CSA knows you prefer to get from this distributor. If I can scroll way down and I'll see a bunch of ones from other distributors. I can also, with this report, change the category. So if I want to be looking at games or issues or graphic novels, I can do that with this category tool. It automatically defaults to the last week of sales, but I can of course change that to be the last month, the last year, whatever I want. I can filter by publisher if that's better for your brain, and working on a lunar order, you could filter to image and DC graphic novels. So there's a lot of ways you can refine this report, but this report has a lot of information here for you. So let's take a look at this. Oh, wow. Look at this. Oh, I guess they're alphabetical, but we're selling some Superman stuff with this movie coming out, you guys. Good.
Is it a movie?
Yeah. So this list is everything that was sold in the last week, and it tells me a bunch of stuff about those items. So right here is this newer edition of this book. It's showing me the date that this item was first in stock. It's showing me the last time this item was received and how many copies were received at that moment. It's showing me the total amount I've ever sold and whether they were from the shelf or people's files. And it will show you the dates of the 3 most recent sales of that item. It's one thing to know that you've sold, like for example, right here, I've sold 45 of this. Dang, good for that. Frank Quietly is my favorite. 45, that's a lot, but it's a different thing to see that the last 3 sales were February, May, and June. So it's saying, okay, I actually am only selling about 1 a month-ish. even though I've sold 45. So it gives you sales velocity, which is a very helpful tool to have when you're picking how many things you want to order. It's showing you how many you currently have on your shelf. So I've got 3 here, even though I did sell 1 in the last week. It looks like I've got 2 in an overstock location. If I had any copies of this currently on order that hadn't been received yet, that would be represented right here. Pull is how many copies of this book are set aside in people's accounts. And then in stock is that total amount that I have across all my locations. So I have 5 of this. Django mentioned this briefly earlier, but you can use minimum points as a way of designating how many copies of a book you always want to have in stock. So Watchmen would be something higher. All-Star Superman, we have a variety of printings. So this one has a minimum point of 1. I only need 1 of this at any given time. And what that means is if I had sold this in that period of time and I didn't have any other inventory, it would be suggesting that I order 1. But because I have 5 in stock and my minimum point is only 1, it's actually suggesting that I order 0, even though I did sell 1 in the last week. Here's another instance of that. There's probably some where I would, this one actually is suggesting I order another one because I only have 1. A minimum point of 1, and I don't have any other in stock. So I could add these items to the order using this field right here. A lot of different places you could do that. And if, let's find an item that is currently on order. So right here, here's an instance of a book that sold in the last week. I've sold 3 copies of it in the last week, but I currently have 6 on order. That's represented right here, but it's also showing me that order, the date that it was created and which distributor it was. And I can use this link to jump out to that order and take a look at it if I want. So there's a bunch of information within here to see what you've sold that you need to get in again, and then let you know how many or how seriously you need those items. Again, you put the numbers that you want in here, and then you can update the quantities on the order as a whole when you hit update form. So yeah, that's one way you can build things. You can also just output a report, show me all items that are below their minimum point. But yeah, one of our first users with CSA asked us to build this see sold items by date report, and it's quickly become my favorite way of doing reorders for our store. When you finish an order, you can export it in a variety of ways, but what's cool is that Diamond, Penguin, Lunar, they all like to have orders that you're placing sent to them in a slightly different way. So like Lunar and Diamond, they have a system where you can just upload a CSV file. Penguin, however, likes you to paste your entire order into a cart in the format of barcode, quantity. CSA knows all of those distributor preferences. So anytime you create an order like this one for Lunar, CSA will immediately default to the preferred order format for that distributor. The Penguin one is really cool. Instead of exporting a downloadable file that you submit, it just opens up a report of your order that is just a copyable text field of your entire order in barcode, quantity. So you can copy that and then go to Penguin and paste it. It's been a long time since we've had any problems getting items into our distributors' websites. I am going to delete this order because I don't need to continue ordering Absolute Jeff Johns for Django. But so that's kind of restocking orders. You can add things a whole variety of ways, searching, looking at sales histories. But even more exciting than that, in my mind, is what the FOCs and, by extension, initial orders look like. So each Friday, when the data becomes available from our distributors, I go out and I download them and I load those orders into CSA. It takes me about 40 minutes to do all 3 distributors. There's some very helpful tools in here for when you're bringing that data in. For example, you can use this one over here to review series codes, and you can identify if there are any like mismatched series codes in the data coming in from our distributors, which is more common than you would think. It'll like highlight any second printing that's just been added to an order that has been given the series code of the first printing, and then it allows you to change it. That's super important because as second printings come out, if you don't change the series code, it will try to pull books, assuming it's the next issue in the series that people are subscribed to. So cool ways to do that. As you're loading in your FOCs, you can use this magic wand to do some magic. This will filter your order down to all your ratio variants. And it will do some background math to suggest what you may want to price them at if you want to make money off of them. So what it will do is identify the ratio needed to order in order to qualify for it. And then it will do some things like identify your shortfall for that item. So it'll say, hey, I see that you need to order 25 of this. You're only ordering 5 right here. So you have a shortfall of 20. So then it will do the math of what it would cost you to add quantities of that regular cover to your order to be able to qualify for the next one. And then it will suggest what you would need to price that at if you want to use that parameter. So you could just default to the ratio price. So 1 in 25 is $25. Or I could look at my cost. This is what it would cost me to stretch to get it. And then high is the cost plus $5. So you don't have wasted all of your time doing that. So that is, some cool ways to help price your variants. And then again, on Tuesday, when our books come in on the invoice section, I usually use those links to look at sold eBay listings of ratio variants. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about the FOC. So after you load it in, like I said, about 40 minutes for all of your distributors, you are going to get a thing that looks like this. All of the items that were coming in on that order. It's separated by publisher. So you can see Ahoy here. Here's Ancestral Recall. It's going to show you any alternate covers for that issue right below it. You can jump to them. They're always just below them. From this order interface, you've also got the presentation for auto sub options. One of the best ways to realize you may want to auto sub is seeing it on the FOC as you're going through and defining how many quantities you want to get. This is an instance of an item that is Ahoy. We've said that we prefer to get that from Lunar. So what you can see right here is this has a green background. If this were an item, or if I were in the Diamond FOC and I looked at this item, it would have a yellow background and it would say not preferred distributor. And you can also see right here the various orders that this book exists on. So I loaded all of these FOCs in on the 4th, and CSA was able to identify that it's on both of these orders, and I've decided to order it from Lunar. But what I want to do is take us down to Halloween. So there are a couple views that you can use to look at your order as you're working through it. This is the detailed view that we're in right now, which makes sense because there's a lot of information presented to you for every item. There's a different view called list view that I'll show you in a second. But CSA will grab and organize all of this information for you. It'll have some title information up here, series codes, item identifiers, your tags for the creative teams on the book, obviously the cover variants right here. Like we said, this is a green background because this is a DC book on a Lunar order. And there's a lot of helpful information right here. I currently have 0 on order because I didn't do an initial order. It's telling me how many holds or subscribers I have for this book. I can hover over that and see the list of names. It shows me that I have 2 requests for this book. So I have 2 people asking for this book outside of a subscription. So it gives me a total pull value of 31 over here. Similar to quantity or in-stock quantities, it's an equation of holds plus requests. I have 31 copies I need to get it to everybody asking for it. And then right here is a field called shelf target. This is my way of telling the system how many copies of this cover in this series I want after my pulls are done. So I put 3 in here. Next month, when Long Halloween number 9 comes through, it will remember that I want 3 for my shelf, even though these can go up and down. It will make that stay consistent. I can change it at any time. But that then gives you your suggested quantity number, which is your pulls plus your shelf targets. You're saying a -2 of on shelf because we use that Shopify integration. Those are the prepaid comics that people have bought online, which makes sense. We've got 2 of those and 2 requests. So right here, it's saying I have a suggestion of 34 in order to fit all of my requirements for this. So I can put that number in here. Anytime a quantity is below its suggested number, it's going to make this quantity field have a yellow little bubble there for you. And then when you finish your order, there's a couple filters you can use to look at all under-ordered items. This would stay out in that situation. So this bar is a very helpful way to make sure you're ordering enough. But you can then use this box right here to also prevent yourself from ordering too many. So within each series, you will look and see the sell-through and received rates of all the other items in this series with this cover A distinction. So I can see in the past, this is how many I received, and this is how many were claimed. Claimed might seem like a weird word for it, rather than saying sold, because a lot of people come in to pick up their comics at weird times or not that frequently. Claimed is a calculation of how many I have sold plus how many are currently set aside in a person's account, assuming, like in their polls, assuming that they are going to buy it, because that's best practice. So at any given time, I can have a working idea of how many were claimed for these, and therefore how many I should order next time, or maybe not over order. Right here in this sold area, this is showing you how many you sold in the various ways that you could have sold them. So right here, it will show you how many copies of the pre-existing series or items in the series you sold off the shelf. You can hover over those numbers and see which customers are buying them off the shelf, which is very helpful if you notice a person has bought, 3 consecutive issues off the shelf. That means they're not subscribed, and maybe you could encourage them to subscribe and have a better locked-in idea of how many of those you need to order. Here's the numbers that you've sold from people's polls. This shows you how many you have sold through your internet or Shopify integration, and then a total value there. And then currently shows you how many you currently have of this item or items in this series in a variety of locations. So between this sort of suggested number and your actual sell-through data being presented to you right there, you can get a really good idea of how much you need to order and the risks of over-ordering with those things. It's really helped us dial in and be more comfortable with our estimations on how many like shelf targets or shelf items we need, for example. And then, yeah, from in the order, you'll see your costing information as well, which is right down here. Right here, you can see how many copies of the various covers you're getting of this series you're working on. Not important for the long Halloween because there's not any ratio variance for it. But if I was looking at a book that has like a 1 in 25, I could hit this little button on this screen and it would show me on this order how many am I ordering. So I don't need to like do the math to see what ratios I qualify for at that point. It's just telling you right there. Alternate covers, there's ways to quickly move through the order. So you can use next publisher or previous publisher and series to move through here. If I hit next series, it will take me to the next series and skip the remaining covers of that series. And then publisher obviously just moves you through from publisher to publisher, so you can move quickly. And there's a button for your initial orders and FOCs that you can use to just autofill your order quantities of all of your items up to the suggested number. I'm neurotic, as you probably have identified, so I don't use that, but you could absolutely use that to autofill those quantities. What's cool about that is it will automatically know to skip any items that are not designated as preferred from this distributor. So you don't have to worry about doubling those up. This has been the detailed view, again, because you've got a lot of information at your fingertips. There's also a consolidated view, which is, eloquently referred to as the list view by us. This just filters your order down in a much more accessible way, so you can kind of move quickly through it. But within this view, there's a couple filters or flags that we've made so you cannot be the failure that Jeff Figley is, or at least was. Back early on in our days of ordering comics, Mighty Mouse was coming through. I was like, Mighty Mouse, do I get 0? Do I get 1? It's got an Alex Ross cover. Do I get 10? I was feeling myself.
I got an 10. Idea, Jeff.
Yeah.
Why don't you mess it up?
Yeah. And in a month later, I opened up my box for my Mighty Mouse, and I saw that there was 100 copies of it in there, which is more Mighty Mice than I needed. And so I was like, those bastards sent me the wrong quantity. And I sure enough went to their website and I had put in the wrong number. It was like 10 years ago. So that was a failure. Also, at one point, we had a customer who wanted all cover price variants of Red Sonja. And there's a billion covers because it's Dynamite. But covers A through G were $3.99 comics that I could just order. And then beyond that was the ratio variants and weird stuff. So for a good while, that was totally fine. Cover X was the $100 glass cover. Well, after like 6 or 7 issues had come out, Dynamite intelligently decided they were going to reduce the number of covers for that series. And in doing so, they consolidated it. And the $100 glass cover that was series, issue X, cover X, was now cover G. And I had somebody subscribe to that. So that's an error on their part. I didn't realize that. I was like, okay, somebody's asking for this. I'm going to order it. And then when it came in, we realized our errors. So we built some ways to prevent you from doing those things. If I hit show under ordered items, this will filter it down to all the things that are below the suggested quantity. So here's that long Halloween I just did right there. Here's some new printings of Dogman that I have enough of. Those are below their minimum point. Yeah, so here's a look at the under-ordered things. It makes sense. Sometimes they're on purpose, like this demo, or like when you're ordering the bundles from DC now. Sometimes you'll have 35 subscribers, but you only need to order 17 to get a bundle. You can do that. It just warns you. It doesn't prevent you from doing anything. Cooler than that, though, and protecting people from Mighty Mice and glass covers, you can hit show expensive items ordered, and this is going to filter your order down to every line where the quantity times the cost of one exceeds a price threshold that you get to designate. So for us, it's $25. When I finish my order, I click this link and it shows me every line item that is more than $25. Again, doesn't prevent me from ordering it, but it does highlight the cost right here, and over here, a note to note the line cost. So that can be a really helpful way of doing that. It will also highlight any item where the singular cost of that item exceeds a cost threshold. So for that glass cover, it would have told me there. It also would have just showed me that it was an expensive line. Or most recently, if you remember ordering your free comic book day books, as I'm sure we all do, Diamond had sent out the solicitations for their EC horror book for free comic book day. As you know, a lot of different publishers, you'll have to order an individual copy or a bundle of copies. And Diamond had told us it was an individual copy. So I was like, cool, I'm gonna order 50 of those. When I went, before I submitted my order and looked at these filters, the line cost of that was prohibitively expensive, and that didn't seem right. So I jumped out to their website. Sure enough, they had given us wrong information, and those were bundles of 50 that I was attempting to order 50 of, which is way too much. This line cost information and highlighting it here is what allowed me to realize that beforehand and save myself the Mighty Mouse pain of all those ECs. So yeah, some filters here, always looking for more input from people about maybe errors that they've made that we can hopefully help build flags to prevent other people from making. Be proud of your failures. Be like Jeff. Talk about them in video calls for years and years. But yeah, when you would finish your FOC, after you've checked out your stuff there, you can export your file and send it off to the distributor just like you would any reorder. And yeah, there's a way for you to leave notes here and stuff. But all in all, it's been a really, really helpful kind of visual way, which I'm a very visual person, to see sell-through numbers and cover variety and locations for every item as I'm moving through it. Has really tightened up the belt on the errors that I make ordering. So yeah, that's orders. We looked at reorders. We looked at some FOCs. Any questions? I mean, that was very, very quick. Oh, Ben, get in here, buddy.
Okay, yeah. So, am I correct in assuming that you're trying to get all of our FOC orders coming through your system rather than having to go to Lunar, to Diamond, to Penguin Random House, all of that?
Yeah, so I download the data and load it into CSA so that I have this visual representation of all my sell-through history and everything. So yeah, we want it through CSA, and then CSA consolidates it into a data file for you to easily send to them. But like the Lunar FOC page can be kind of not useful if you're trying to figure out your order numbers there.
Sure. Okay. So say, for example, we don't order Archie Comics or Dogman, but that'll be on like the FOC list for say like next week or next month or whatever. Will that show up in the list that you have down below in here?
In like the under order? Yeah. So as long as it's in that data file that you're bringing in from them, CSA will load in everything that's on that data file.
Okay, all right. And how about Lunar does their monthly specials where they do like a hardcover special every single month? Is that loaded in as well?
That's a great call. We have not done that yet. You can you can download a CSV of those order forms, right? They do that. Django, what do you think the best way to do that is? Because they're
Send,
not technically unique items, they just
I
have a
think the
window.
best way would be to send us a support request and ask for us to build that. I can't believe
Yeah.
nobody's asked us to build that yet.
We have talked about
Yeah,
it with
it
multiple
should
people,
be.
but
Oh, have
yeah,
we?
yeah, it
Somebody should email me.
yeah, it the tricky part about it is that yeah, it's essentially the same version of pre-existing items and data, but it just has a window of time where it's available for a certain price. So we could load them in. They would all be listed as resolicits because they're items that have been available. But yeah, that could be a very helpful way to go about it. Up until that point, I will download that CSV file to see what their image sale is or the hardcover sale is, and then I'll just build an order in CSA for Lunar and upload it to them, and it gets the discount qualifier and everything. But I'm working off of that list that they provide us and just building my order in CSA and then exporting it to them.
Makes sense. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, well, listen, buddies. Now we get to do some very fun stuff, which is the other side of orders, which is you've sent this stuff off, then you're getting a data file that's your invoice along with a bunch of boxes. How do you bring that stuff into CSA to pull for all of your subscribers and manage shortages and whatnot? This is a rhetorical question. I know the answer. Django's going to show you.
So, like Jeff said, this is the opposite of orders. This is where you get the stuff that you ordered. At the beginning, you will just create an invoice in CSA. You'll select your distributor and you'll create the invoice. We've already done that for this week's new comics. So I'm just going to use this one that we built to check in our books this week. But basically, you create an empty invoice, you download a CSV from your distributor, and you upload it into our system, and it will create all these line items. So this is what we're going to receive in our store from Penguin this week. Each line has a good amount of information on it, including how many holds you have, and you can hover over to see who they are, how many special orders you have, same thing. It'll give you a list of all of those together. So you got 12 holds, one request. That means you're going to pull 13 of them. It'll tell you how many you're expected to put on the shelf, assuming you get your full order that you've placed. A little bit of other information here. The way we do it in our store is we will just count everything out of the box, compare it to the packing slip, make sure we have everything we expect. And then if we have any exceptions, we'll put a sticky note over a barcode and take one of each barcode over to the computer and scan them in. And what it does when you scan the barcode in, it assumes that you received the correct quantity. So we were invoiced for 5. It says that we got 5. It assumes that there are no damages, and it highlights this field for you to scan the next barcode. So it sounds like a lot of work to scan each barcode in. It's super fast. And the other advantage that it gives you is it catches any weirdo mistakes in the shipment or in the data that you have, so that when you're scanning a book in front of a customer with a line behind them, you don't have to worry about barcode problems, right? You got enough going on. It can also catch mistakes, like if they send you the wrong dynamite variant because the humans doing the picking for the distributor get confused, then it can help you discover those mistakes. Once you're done scanning all these things in, you can create a pull sheet for everybody. And that's just instructions for what you should pull out of your piles and set aside for your customers and whose files they go into. I guess one thing I should have mentioned beforehand is that you can also zipper multiple invoices together. So you could grab these 2 invoices and you can check in multiple invoices at the same time. You can do it from different distributors, but so this one knows that we're checking in from 2 different Penguin orders. It could be Penguin, Lunar, and Diamond all zippered into one. We prefer to do that in our store because it's nice to make one alphabet at the beginning of the whole process and deal with that, rather than doing pulls for Lunar, pulls for Diamond, pulls for Penguin, put them aside for Lunar, put them aside for Diamond customers, put them aside for Penguin customers. So you can check in as many invoices as you want all at the same time. If you scan a thing that's on both invoices, it'll say, hey, which one are you checking in right now? So it helps kind of coach you through that. I'm going to look at last week's order here. Holy cow, a lot of comics are coming out.
Yeah.
So there's July for Lunar and there's July for Penguin. And I'm going to show you what our pull sheets look like. I don't know if you guys pull with a list of customers and the comics they get, or comics and the customers who get them. Every store does that a little bit different, and we've ended up building a lot of different layouts for this. But we're looking at a list of customers and the comics they get. Let me scroll down and find somebody interesting here. There we go. So here we've got Anna. This would have her phone number if we were looking at it, not on our demo. It's telling us that Anna doesn't want bags and boards. It's telling us what Anna wants set aside for her from those 2 invoices that we were looking at. And it's giving us a warning that this one right here is not one copy of an A cover like most things are. So just to kind of make you slow down, double check what you're pulling. This is a B cover. Don't pull the A. If there were 2 copies, it would also give you that little flag there. It also is going to tell you if an item is prepaid. So Ben prepaid for this item. And so you can do whatever your process is. In our store, we like to set it aside, have them come up to the counter, cash in their prepayment so that they have a chance to add on a candy bar or something. But you could have it ready for them to just walk in and walk out. It's also telling us that Ben is not a subscriber or a frequent visitor, and it's putting a phone right there. So because the system doesn't have any subscriptions for him, or it's been 4 months since he came in, the system kind of reminds you, maybe you should get a hold of this guy, because he's not a Wednesday warrior. You don't know that he's going to be in on a routine. Zach right here has a delinquent file, so we should probably call him as well. The other thing that it will track is whether condition is important to that customer. So if you've asked them that question, it can tell you, hey, pull from the good stack on these ones. Don't pull from the bad stack. And then because Jeff has a mild case of carpal tunnel, thanks to pulling books in giant stacks forever, the font size on here will not break your wrist if you print these out. And it'll also do its best, depending on your printer, it'll do its best to not split somebody's list. So if you get to the end of a page and it could only fit up to bring on the bad guys for Jeff, it would push his whole entry to the next page, just so you know what each page is. If you want to sort by box number, you can do that. If you want to sort by first name, which I'm going to tell you, I don't judge you, but I do. You can sort by first name. That's fine. And that's kind of it. Like when you lock invoices are super straightforward, just scanning the things. It does all that. It'll give you a shortage and overages report, so you can send that to your distributor or enter it into the web interface that they've got. When you lock an invoice, it increases your inventory and it allocates the pulls to people's files. If you don't have enough copies of something to fill the orders, it'll stop and it'll say, hey, what do you want me to do about this? Here's a list of everybody that wants it, and you've got to pick the 3 people who don't get it. It also gives you a little bit of information about those 3 people. So it'll say like, hey, this person hasn't been in 6 months or whatever. This person is delinquent. So you can decide who to give it to and who to put off until the next time you receive those books. Yeah, then once you lock it, you're ready to start selling them straight out of people's files or off the shelf. Any invoice questions?
How do you lock it?
Just up here, you go to invoice actions and lock.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, no questions on my side. That's pretty straightforward. I like that.
Nice. Yeah, this took us from a long Tuesday process down to a very short Tuesday process.
Yeah.
Used to be me and Jeff battling for hours and hours to make sense of the multiple distributors. And now, like, I sit at home and do tech support, and the person who does the check-in just kind of rolls through it in a couple hours.
Nice.
We're going to look at back issues probably last, but other than that, that's most of the system. We've got this internal messaging system here where you can send messages back and forth with your staff, better than sticky notes probably. We've got a reconcile registers. So at the end of the night, you just count how many nickels, dimes, and quarters you have. You don't even have to do math. You just count the, I've got 20 quarters and it tells you what the deposit should be. I showed you the inventory update. The buying collections is pretty straightforward. The reports. So like Jeff mentioned, we've built a lot of these reports on demand for our users. When we first brought our first customer in using the system, we had been just asking the questions of the database, like just typing it in, hacking into the mainframe to find out answers to our questions. And his first day, he was like, "Hey, how do I find out what I sold today?" I was like, "Oh no, I have to build a pretty report." So all of these have been built for cases like that. And a lot of them have been built to be super flexible so that we don't have to build yet another report. But sometimes it's like, what are our pull sales versus shelf sales? That's a hard question to answer. So we built a report to see. It won't surprise you that books sell well off the shelf and comics sell well out of pulls.
Do you have a like a report that basically shows at the end of the month when we have to basically file our sales tax information?
Yeah, so that's the Z tape here. You can choose any date span that you want for the Z tape. Takes a second to load, but this will give us our category information. It'll give us our revenue. If we have cost information entered in there, it will give us cost summaries. We haven't traditionally been great about tracking our costs. So our store has, in this time span, we sold $17,000 worth of stuff and only $10,000 worth of the stuff has a cost associated with it. But you can go in and edit those and get that number up, depending on the system you're coming over from and how clean your data is. Like a lot of people who come over from RMH have pretty complete data on this because RMH forces them to put in a cost. So yeah, this is your end of the month, end of the day, whatever span you want. Z-tape.
How hard is it to build out a report? Like if there's one, I mean, I see you have there's a pretty decent list over there on the left side, the available reports, but say there's one that's, we need a special report for whatever reason. Is that a difficult process?
Try to prioritize those.
Gotcha.
I ask for a sample of exactly what you want. And then I'll probably ask a couple clarifying questions to make sure that the math I'm doing is the math that you think I'm doing. And then we just build that. And usually we'll push that out ahead of the release schedule to you only. And you get to look at it and test it out and give us feedback before everybody else gets access to it.
Okay.
Since you're asking for it, you get the worst version of it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Where does the sorry, I wrote down a question and now I can't remember what my question was. I think I'm asking where's the data live? Like where does that information live? Well, I have an inventory.
Yeah. So right now everything is on Liquid Web servers.
Okay.
It's just like a big server company in the middle of the country.
Sure.
We're working to move the databases into like an Amazon kind of cloud situation, which
do an AWS or something.
Yeah, do AWS, something that will let us kind of back up in real time, write to one database and retrieve from another database, just like make things super snappy and super redundant, because this is what your store is running on.
What do you think about? Maybe that could get muddy. I'm thinking in terms of reporting. Let's say I'm good with SQL reporting and I can write out a SQL query.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about giving your customers access to something like that? Read access to something like that?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Just because that opens up a lot of security risks.
Yeah.
But if there's stuff that you want to export and then hand over to your fan of Excel, I don't know if you guys have anybody who loves Excel a whole lot.
That's Ben right there.
we can make custom exports and stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, a lot of these reports will let you export them. I don't know. Yeah. So
I don't suspect we're going to need any kind of crazy report or something like that. This is more just like what ifs.
Yeah, you are. I believe that you're good at SQL. I wouldn't wish our database structure on anybody
I understand.
trying to get meaningful information out of it, because it's comics are so big, you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason you guys had to make a whole system because of comics. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's an insane thing.
I don't think there's something more complex. Like the
Yeah.
closest things that we've been able to think of are like magic cards are pretty complicated, but they're easier than comics. I think
Tires, car
tires,
parts.
yeah, car parts and records are probably the next two most complicated widgets that you could
Yeah.
sell.
Yeah, I came from like ticketing. Like that's what I did for like 10, 12 years or whatever, was
Nice.
local attraction, like our aquarium
Oh
here.
yeah,
So I set up their systems for ticketing. It's same idea, is the ticket's worth this amount of money, but then it's not. But it's sometimes
right.
it is, but it's not always. But
Right.
mostly it is, but never.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, let's look at back issues real quick here. We had a moment in our shop where we were overstaffed by quite a bit with some unexperienced staff. So we started having them like alphabetized boxes of comics, which is helpful if you know what was in that box that they alphabetized. So that's nice. But then when we started thinking about it, we were like, well, we could also just track this box. And if we do it in a loose way where we're just saying, yeah, we have this issue, instead of, yeah, we have this variant of this issue and it's this condition and this price, then we could, when somebody comes in and they want a bizarro off, like dumb back issue of Thor from the 90s, we could say, oh yeah, I know which box that's in. We could grab it and price it and sell it to them, right? So we needed a quick way to do that. But in order to build the quick way, we also needed to know the complicated way. So I'm going to show you the complex way of tracking a back issue, and then we'll look at the quick way of doing it. This is all fed from the Grand Comics database, which is 2.5 million back issues or so. And it's showing us every single cover for the Incredible Hulk here. It's including the British covers or whatever variants the Grand Comics database has, because who knows, you might buy a big old pile of British Hulk comics one day, right? So we can go in here and we can say, we're looking at a comic that is in one of our warehouse boxes. We've got a copy of it. We're going to price it at $150. We're going to give it a condition of, say, 7. And we're going to say, smells great. We could say that there's a name on the signature if we want. And then we can tell it which location it's in. So I'm going to put it in the delete these issues location, but you could put it in warehouse box 32 quadrant 4 if you wanted. So this is just a way for you to be able to know exactly where something is in your ecosystem. We can decide whether we want to sell it on the site. And then when we submit this form, it adds that to our inventory, and we can look at the different versions of it. We've got one that we sold a while ago, and then we've got this one that we just created. Right. So this is now in our inventory. If we were in a transaction and we searched for Hulk 102, it would show up as an inventoried item, like that Tomb of Dracula. Right. But then let's say that we've got this big old box of junk and we had the intern decide to track what it is, and we gave them this form. So they're going to say, yeah, we've got issues 100 to 105. We've got issue F, I guess. We've got issue 162. We've got 3 copies of 189 and 2 copies of 180 to 183. And then we've got issues 200 to 197. So you can see some things there don't really make rational sense. They're going to submit that, and it's going to say, hooray, I added 16 copies that you told me to, but I had problems with these. Number 100 is not an issue in Incredible Hulk. I didn't do anything with it. Did you mean number 100 from Tales to Astonish? Because Hulk didn't start until 102. Same thing with 101. F is not a number. I don't know, dude. You put it in there. And then 200 to 197, that doesn't quite make sense. Did you maybe mean 197 to 200? Right? So now when we're looking at these, we can see that we have active, we have inactive, and we have loose inventory. So this loose inventory is what we just added. All we said is we have number 102. We didn't give it a condition. We didn't give it a price. We didn't give it a grade. We didn't even say which cover it was, if that matters, right? The way that this represents itself Man, I just hit the button that killed my internet. That was
I was
awesome.
about to say, yeah, you just froze up there for a second.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know if it was me or not.
Nope, definitely me, buddy. So the way this represents itself for your customers, and what we do is we have QR codes that link to this page all over our store. So your customers can go in here and they can see a list of everything that you have in your inventory that has prices on this page. So it's going to feature the most expensive stuff across the top. It's going to give them a lot of sorting. And there's that Hulk 102 that we put in with a price, right? If it's on Shopify, they can link out, they can pay for it right there. They can also filter, so they can say, I only want to see Golden Age comics because I'm one of those Golden Age guys. And it'll cut it down to just Golden Age books that we have in stock and for sale.
Wow.
And then those ones that we put in that didn't have prices or anything else, those go into the comics getting processed tab. So these are all those books that we just added that don't have a price, don't have a grade. They're missing some important aspect of the comic that you want to sell, and they have to request pricing from you. And then you look in your system and you're like, oh, somehow I have 6 copies of Incredible Hulk 103. They're in these places in the warehouse. I'll consolidate them and price them for this person, and then we can list them on the site as real inventory items. So that's like, back issues are huge and complicated and hard to deal with. I think we've got a pretty streamlined way of entering back issues and getting them listed on your site and on Shopify if you're integrated with that. So,
Okay.
you guys have any other questions? Like,
Yeah, what was that other back issue tab? When you go to back issues, there were 2 things on the drop down.
down here, so we've got the back issue inventory tab as well. So this is just a way to see, this is the recent stuff that we've added to our back issue inventory. So like from here, I can edit that issue of Incredible Hulk, and I could say, oh, we're going to move this to the zone 1 if I wanted to. Or I could
Gotcha.
change the price or whatever.
Okay.
And then a big ugly list of loose inventory and the reason it's loose, right? So we could define a price and condition, but until we tell it which variant it is, it's still going to be considered loose.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
How do you see when somebody's requested pricing for a loose inventory item?
That's a good question. It comes in, it doesn't happen very often for us because we're usually standing right there and having them pointed out to us. It comes in, I think, as a project. So our projects tab is like quick things that you can have your staff do. If you were to sell something, if you were to sell a comic off the shelf below 0 copies, it would create a project for somebody to figure out why was that allowed to happen. Is it still in somebody's file? Did one get stolen? Like, what's going on? So I think that it comes in here as just a note. Hey, this person wants more information about this book. Go tell them what it is.
Okay.
To give you a full answer, I'd have to look at the code.
That's fair. That's fair.
Oh, where was it that I put like my cost that I paid for the back issue?
So that's going to be in the buying collections.
Ah, okay.
Let me find. We're behind in buying. So if we go here into Adrian's collection, this knows that for Detective 730, well, we didn't enter prices on these ones. Here we go. Yeah, most of these are things that we just made a lump offer for, so it's a little messy, but here we go. This Hawkeye #1, we offered $1 for it, probably because we have 7 copies somewhere, right? So we offered $1. When it sells, if it sells for $10, it'll know that our profit on that was $9.
Okay, so for me, since I want to put like the cost that we paid for each of our back issues, I would rather put the back issue into this spot rather than the back issue page, correct?
That's probably the way to do it right now. We haven't, so the costing information for back issues is something that's kind of new to the system. So for now, that's probably the way to track it because it'll at least get the data in there for reporting. Eventually, we'll probably have a way for you to just make a note of what you paid for it within the back issue item. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would almost be like I'm thinking about like sort of the initial input of all the back issues. It's almost like we treat it like we're just buying that collection.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And you could do that and you can push them up to inventory before you're done adding things to that trend.
Right. Yeah.
Collection. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so let's say we have existing stock, right?
Mhm.
And we've decided that, all right, we're taking it off the shelf now. Is there a simple function to simply change over what our shelf inventory is to transfer to a box or something like that as back issues?
So you are talking about, you have your back issues entered as regular catalog items in RMH.
Correct.
So for so the back issue catalog and the main items catalog are two different beasts. What I would probably recommend on yours, John, would be to just define them as back issues as a category, which you would call them departments in RMH. We call them categories in CSA. So you would make sure that they're in the back issue department, and you would sell through those as regular catalog items. We haven't it's really difficult to take something from a catalog item and turn it into a back issue item because there's not enough information to make that exact match on those things. So you can either continue using the catalog items as your back issue catalog, or you can start using the back issue catalog as you get new stuff in and kind of straddle the two systems while things get moved over.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, like so many things in comics, it's a little messy. What else you guys got? Anything at all? I'm excited for Superman.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But my business partner has a question. So he's not here. So he was asking me, since I do all the comic stuff, he does all the gaming stuff and cards and stuff. So when we go through our system of importing our comic suite inventory over to this, would that also include, Magic and board games, stuff like that? Is that already in your database? Or
Yeah, it should include everything. Some Magic products have like duplicate barcodes and things get a little bit messy. You may have a little bit of cleanup to do just because of the way those products are.
Sure.
But generally we have really good success importing clean products from your entire export. So we'll the week before we move you over, we'll just send you some instructions for exporting your products, and we just move that stuff over for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
I got a random question about that fancy little search bar at the top.
Fancy.
Yeah, does it support like advanced search? Because like I'm not the comics guy, and somebody walks up because I'm covering it because Ben and Jason decided that they wanted to go do a convention without me, and I'm stuck in the shop and I have no idea what this thing is called, but I need to find it. Can I do advanced search stuff? Can I
There are some advanced
operators?
search things. Operators, no.
Okay.
That's a hurdle that we haven't figured out yet. But you can do things like bat yay TP it matches the beginnings of words.
Okay.
Right? So it's finding Batman year TP.
Got it.
And then we have a handful of configurable result orders that you can have in there. And it will let you do, like, if you want Captain America #1, ours is configured to put exact matches at the beginning of the string at the top of the results.
Okay.
Not everybody likes that. Some people like straight up alpha no matter what. And so we have that option as well. I think ours is also set up to do its best to put new products at the top. What is a new comic product is a very difficult question to answer. So that's why it does its best.
New to the store, new to the world, new to whatever.
Yeah. Do we believe that the data that they sent us was real?
Right.
And then the other thing you can do is go to this main items page where we have a lot of filters you can use to try.
Got it. Okay.
As well. So not operators yet to speak of. Partly because comics have so many stupid hyphens, man. If you like, for a while, if you searched X-men, everything fell apart because it thought that we wanted X minus men. Yeah. And it returned no X-Men results. Yeah. So yeah, that's something that I just haven't really been able to wrap my brain around. I think the long-term solution to that is like a third-party search suite that can do that for you.
Yeah, and that's yeah, I understand. Implementing that into any kind of system is going to be a pain in the butt.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
What about scan? I mean, obviously it's just keyboard emulator scanner is all you're using for.
Yeah, just a barcode scanner.
Just a barcode scanner of whatever kind, doesn't matter.
We have
Whatever
a
plugs into your
recommendation.
system.
Yeah, we have a recommendation, but if you already have one, you can probably use it. It just needs to be able to scan those last 5 digits in your comic and book barcodes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like a specific Honeywell brand because it's just the best one we've found. It's got a wide scan range. You can go either way. It'll scan
3D
QR
scanner.
codes, and you can drop it a lot of times before it breaks.
We'll probably need that. Yeah, that's important. What about implementation time? Like, how long does it take from go?
So right now we are in the middle of a ton of stores trying to get away from Comic Suite and RMH because Diamond pulled support for that.
Yeah.
But once we've got you scheduled, usually what we do is on a Monday, we'll send you like 4 emails like, hey, answer these questions, export these files, send us some money, and do these things to prepare your store and your body for this whole thing.
Got it.
So you send us some,
that kind of thing.
eat a good breakfast, play with the demo. So you'll send us some files and we test them out during the week. And then on Sunday night, if you're launching on Monday, on Sunday night after close, you send us the files again. And we do the import all night long and send you credentials late at night. And in the morning, you flip a switch and now you're using CSA. It's pretty important to flip the switch like that so that you don't have like some stuff in one system and some stuff in the other system. Everybody who's gone in and confidently tried to do that has regretted it.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, in our case, we don't have that.
We don't
have any files to send you.
Yeah.
So,
you'll want to start ringing people up
yeah.
through CSA on day one rather than sticking with, half and half.
Right.
Yeah.
Do a hard
Yeah.
Stop using the old one and use this one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's support look like?
You're looking at them.
I got you.
It's me and Jeff. We take it really seriously. I don't know if you guys saw me doing stuff on my computer while Jeff was talking, but
I think
we've
both
been
of
doing support.
us have handled a little tech support during this meeting. So
Yeah,
we take it really, really seriously. We use a third-party app that like organizes all incoming help tickets and allows us to get to them very quickly and have responses to it.
Cool.
Yeah, the rate of onboarding has generally been kind of dictated by how much customer support we can give people at the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
You guys come with very high marks from Chad from Emerald City Comics down in Florida.
I love Chad.
Yeah, we're big fans of Chad.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. They moved over from Moby, and Chad has high standards for his data.
Yeah.
And he was right to be cautious at first, but once he thought we were ready, it turns out we were.
Nice.
Well, guys, we'll get you access to the demo server. We can get you this video if you want. Yeah, we are available all day, all times. If you have any other questions that come up or further explanations that you could want, by all means, don't hesitate to give us a shout. We love hearing from people.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
I've
Very much
got-
appreciated this.
I'm ready to go. I'm so hot, but I want to ask you guys, this felt like a really good demo. Do you mind if we put this one on YouTube?
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
fine with
you're
it.
fine.
Yeah,
Awesome.
go for it.
Sweet. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome,
Finally
you
have an
guys.
updated one.
Well,
Yeah, that
take
sounds
care,
great to me.
everybody. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks,
Sounds
guys.
good.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right. Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody.
See ya.